Welcome to the Fill Your Cups podcast. We're your hosts,
Morgan
and Bailey.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. We are so happy that you are here for another episode of the podcast. Today we were talking about filling your cups by using love languages.
Yes.
So we will talk about the 5 love languages and ways that we use them to better our relationships, and then little things that you can do in your life to love people the way that they want to be loved, and notice when someone's giving you love in a different language than you might normally want to receive in, but figure out how to communicate that, all of those things. So we're really excited about that. Before we get into that, what's filling your cup today?
Today I've got some water because it's so freaking dry outside and I am dehydrated. I can feel my skin like crackling away. So I'm just drinking some water, but I do have a little like raspberry lemonade flavor packet in there. So tastes like lemonade. Love. Yes. What's filling your cup?
It is so dry, by the way. It is cold, like 7 degrees, feels like negative, whatever. And I get the cracking skin, cracking lips, everything, like trying to moisturize and hydrate. I've had over 100 ounces of water today.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I still am like, I feel so dry.
Yeah.
But I have my water, and then I also have a non-alcoholic quirk because I'm turning the end of dry January and sticking strong. So,
which is super awesome. You were saying earlier you've never done a dry January before.
Yeah,
I know you've done like sober Octobers and stuff, but
yeah, it's so weird. I don't know why I haven't done dry January, because I've done like alcohol-free April and sober October and no alcohol November, and just like random months when I'm like, okay, I just need a break. And it just kind of happened that January felt that way this year for me, with tons of drinking in the holiday season.
Yes.
So it has been a good reset for me. I was telling you, this week has been the first week that I've really kind of been like craving some kind of alcohol. I think it's the Chiefs going into the playoffs, and then also just I've had a few more social things. And
yes, that's what I was gonna say. Like I think January is an easier month to do because you don't have to be super social. But then whenever you are, it's like, oh wait, it's so much fun, and like everyone else is getting a drink, like you might as well. Well, I fully respect that and applaud you for not applause.
Thank you. Plus, there's fun things like non-alcoholic quirks. So.
Yes. I've still never had one of those.
You want to try it?
Yeah.
I don't have a cold sore or anything.
Bailey, if you know.
Yeah. I used to get cold sores really bad when we were younger. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Tell me. It doesn't really like remind me of a quirk.
It's super fruit seltzer. It says it's the flavor. Jared just asked me yesterday, are there multiple flavors? And there's not.
Oh, really?
But there's also no added sugar. It's only like 20 calories.
Yeah.
So
I could definitely see that being really good if you can't drink.
Yeah.
And like that's what you're wanting to do. Well, I really like that.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into our episode or too much on our dry January, I did have some shout outs. So we had put on Instagram, we just put a simple like what's filling your cup, and we got lots of responses that I just wanted to go through a few of them. And if this is yours, say hey and let us know. But some of them we got so far, it was seeing my sister-in-law after a long time, which we love.
Yes.
Reconnecting with old friends.
Oh, that's a good one.
We got starting the new year off with lots of home time to rest and recharge. Thankful for the snow. Yes, thanks snow.
The one thing you're thankful for with the snow.
Right, to stay home. We've got the cozy weather and spending time slowing down. I really like that one. I love the thankfulness of like slowing down. Those are 2 different people who said those, and they're like very similar, and I really like them. We've also got yummy and pretty food. I'm very intrigued by the prettiness of all of it. And then we've got a couple more. We've got staying true to my New Year's habits and goals so far, which is so awesome. Congratulations. And we also have the quote that you are not missing out because you have different priorities than everyone else.
Ooh,
and I loved
good one.
All of those responses and thought they were
FOMO is out. JOMO is in.
Yes, absolutely. I actually had Julia text me that and was like, I'm loving this. I'm like living by this right now. I think that's a really good thing to try. And I was like, obviously me too.
Nice.
I love it.
Nice. I love that.
Yes.
Well, shout out to everybody who participates on our Instagram. We're going to try to be a little more consistent. We like to do like a Fill Your Cups Friday type thing.
Yeah.
Where we ask you what's filling your cup so that you can going into the weekend, reflect on your week, think about what's filled your
Yeah.
cup this week, and tell us on Instagram.
Yeah, I do always love them because honestly, I always submit an answer myself, but it does make me like think about it. And I'm like, what did fill my cup this week?
Yeah.
What really is like really making me happy this week? And I think it is fun way to like reflect, like you said. I like it.
Little gratitude practice.
Yeah. I like it. Well, let's go ahead and get into the episode. Like Morgan said earlier, we are doing a love languages episode. So Valentine's Day is right around the corner. It's a month of love, so we might as well speak the love languages.
For sure.
And there are 5 love languages. And I want you guys, while you're listening, to ask yourself how you receive your love language and how you give your love language.
Mhm.
So our 5 love languages, and then we'll kind of deep dive into every single one of them and give day-to-day examples of how you can use them.
Mhm.
But our 5 love languages are going to be words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, gift giving, and acts of service.
Yes.
So, yes.
And I was going to say that Gary Chapman is the one who wrote the 5 Love Languages book where
Shut up.
this was
He
kind of
discovered it?
started. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he like created the system.
Fun.
Yeah, and have you read that before?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Recommend after our book recommendation week, I do recommend reading that one. There's actually 5. He wrote 5 love languages, and then he also wrote a couple spin-offs, maybe just one. I know there's a 5 love languages for children because children, like specifically the way that you love them, has to be a little bit different
of course.
as they're developing. So he has that, but then also you can go and take a quiz at 5lovelanguages.com. You can like take your quiz and see what your love language is.
Yeah.
They do have actually like it's separated into romantic, family, friendships, and workplace. I don't think they always did.
No, I don't think so.
Typically though, and the book has a little assessment that you can do to figure out what your love language is as well. So usually you can kind of figure it out on your own and kind of just think about the ways that you like to be loved or give love or whatever. But that, just so everybody knows, Gary Chapman's kind of the one that founded the idea, wrote the book on it, and you can definitely take a little quiz online to figure out yours.
I really like that. We'll make sure to put the link in the show notes for you guys, so that way if you're wanting to take the quiz, you can head on over to that and take that.
Yeah.
Well, should we start it right off with our first category?
Yes. And is this one high up for you, I thought?
This is my number 1.
Okay,
Yes.
I
So
thought so.
this is my number 1. It is words of affirmation. It's funny because it's my number 1 on giving and my number 1 on receiving. So it kind of is natural to me. It comes very naturally to me. But basically, words of affirmation is using your words to love people. So you're giving high compliments all the time. You're giving high praise. You're very like affirmative, which is funny because that's in the word. But it's kind of like you'll notice it if you're telling a story to someone and that person is really locked into the story with you and really commenting on everything you're saying and like asking you the questions. They're probably a words of affirmation person.
Yeah.
Which
Or
is
they
so
say a lot of things like, "Oh, good for you," or
yeah.
"Wow, that's great."
Yeah.
Or
They're
even
kind of your cheerleader.
yeah, and even sometimes even though it may not be a part of the story that you're telling, like you do this a lot, where you'll be like, "Oh my gosh, your eyes look so green today." Sorry, continue. You know? Where you'll like pause to give a compliment. Like to you, it is worth it to get those words out to you because you want to affirm them. So
yes.
And I want to pause before we get super far into this and ask you your opinion on this, because I know a lot of people have the opinion that like, oh, I give and receive love very differently.
Yeah.
And I don't really believe that. I never really have. And maybe part of it is because when you like read the love languages book, first of all, when you test, you get
one love language.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty strongly that typically the way that you like to receive love is going to be your go-to whenever you're giving love.
Yeah.
I feel like the majority of the time that is the case. So I do think that you can have kind of like a top 2 or like bottom 1 or something like that. And maybe like the top 2 can kind of alternate the ways that you give it or something like that.
Yes.
But I don't really think that it's very likely that if you are a words of affirmation person and you love to give words of affirmation or you love to receive words of affirmation that you don't like doing the opposite.
I completely agree.
And I think it would be the same with all of the other ones. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think that it can alternate a little bit, but I
Mhm.
do feel like typically when you are with someone who say words of affirmation like Bailey, who, you know, gives you a lot of compliments
Mhm.
and you think, oh, that might be their love language without asking them or without being like, hey, can you read this book and take this quiz and tell me?
Can you take this test for me real quick?
But for those people in your life that give you a lot of words of affirmation, you can probably guess that they would receive love well if you were giving them words of affirmation. too.
Yes, completely agree. Or that it would mean a lot to them and make them feel very loved.
Yes. Yeah. So what would you say, like, if someone was to ask you, oh, what, or Mason or mom or me or whatever, like,
Mhm.
what would be the best way for me to like show you love? Like, what would you say?
Ooh, I say I've actually had this conversation with Mason because words of affirmation is not on his like
Mhm.
top two. It does not come naturally to him, and so that was something that we always really had to work on and have to be cognizant of. But the biggest things for me is that I really need the recognition. I need to be told like you're doing a great job, or
Mhm.
thank you for taking the trash out, or oh, I can tell that you dyed your hair. It looks really good. So it's things like that of the recognition that make me feel seen and heard.
Mhm.
And it's just by the words themselves that
Can-
people can say.
Yeah, I really like that. I have a really close friend who is also words of affirmation
Mhm.
and kind of had a similar thing with her partner where that was not their gut instinct or their top love language, you know?
Yeah.
So they had to have a conversation about that too. I'm curious for people listening because we're talking about this in a very how-to sense. Like we
Yes.
want you to know the love languages, but we more than that, we want you, and more than knowing your own, we want you to think about how you can incorporate them into your life to make your relationships deeper, stronger,
Mhm.
more connected.
Yes.
So, do you mind sharing like how would that conversation go if you were bringing up like I need more words of affirmation?
Yeah. When we do have the conversations, a lot of times at the beginning, it was Mason kind of being like it's not natural to me. Like, I just don't have, like, I can thank the compliments, but I just don't say them. And I'm like, well, why don't you say them? And he's like, because I just don't. Like, it's just not what comes
Intuitive,
out. Yeah. Like, he would never
instinctive.
stop a conversation to say, your eyes look really pretty or something like that.
Mhm.
Whereas I would. And if that was to happen, I'd be like, and like, it'd make everything for me. But he's like, I just don't do that. Even though it's funny because he's a very talkative person and he's a very like words person, but it's not a words of affirmation person.
Mhm.
So I think at the beginning, I like really asked him, I was like, okay, well, I need you to try. Like, I need you to remember that this is how I feel loved. And so it really just over time, like, he got better at giving compliments. And I think a lot of it too was that I give so many, or I give
Mhm.
so much thanks and so much gratitude. And so I'm like over the top on words of affirmation sometimes that I'm like, listen, I know this is really cheesy, or I know that like you don't need to hear this, but I want to tell you anyway, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that's kind of how it started, was just me telling him like, this is what I need and I need you to remember. And so then I would kind of lead by example. So that way he kind of almost like, I can't think. It's like a cue and response, actually.
Oh yeah.
Which we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
So like if he's cooking dinner, I say, thank you so much for cooking dinner, babe. And he says, oh, you're so welcome. So then the next time I'm cooking dinner, he might say it or something like that. And so I think that's kind of how it works for us. And honestly, I'm not above asking for it.
Yeah.
If I need it, I'm not above saying like, did you like my shorts today? And then he can say yes. And I can say, really? Like, you should tell me that, or things like that. So,
Yeah.
I
like
don't know if that's.
No, I like that as we go into the other topics too, as kind of like a framework. Like, first of all, I really like that you said when we have these conversations, present tense, instead of like the one time I had this conversation, I brought it up and now everything's great. Because this is an instinctive, like innate thing. That's the whole point of it, right? We all fall into these types. And that doesn't mean that we can't love someone else whose type is different, you know, than ours. So we have to keep working on it. So I like as like a framework, almost like the first step is to communicate what each other's is
Yeah.
in any relationship, like friendship or romantic relationship, or
Mm-hmm.
I think with kids it's like a little bit different. Obviously, you don't have to be you don't want to tell your kid like, hey, you need to give me more.
Yeah.
But you can probably identify that in your kid and then realize like, okay, they really respond to this.
Yeah.
But or like in the workplace, maybe maybe
Mhm.
if you are feeling like, okay, I know my manager is very receptive to when I'm like, this is the kind of thing that I need.
Yeah.
So, and she often is even like, how can I help you? What do you need from me?
Oh, that's excellent. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's a really good manager.
Yeah.
And
that.
shout out Sierra. But anyway, so I know that if I told her like, yeah, I respond really, really well to praise, and like I find that I want to do my job better when I get praise, which to be honest, words of affirmation is not mine.
Yeah. Which is
But-
always so funny between us because sometimes you're like, oh, thanks. And I'm like, you're so welcome.
Yes, yeah. And so see, and I feel like I think I have to think about it a little bit more with you.
Mhm.
Like when I'm with you, I'm like, okay, and I think about like, okay, for instance, like when you said it's not natural for Mason to stop, like interrupt someone to tell them their eyes are pretty.
Mhm.
It's not natural for me to do that either.
Mhm.
But with you, sometimes I'm like, if I notice something is really cute, or I like
Yeah.
really think that something you said was really smart or something like that,
Mhm.
I'm like, she would probably rather me interrupt to give her the compliment
Yeah.
as I'm thinking it, rather than like wait till she's finished. Like she doesn't care as much about that.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many people who, if you did that, they'd be like, I was in the middle of saying something.
Yeah.
Or they'd be like, okay, you're clearly not listening to me. Like
Yeah.
things like that. Whereas me, I'm like, oh, shut up. Thank you. And like,
Yes.
and then I think the thing with words of affirmation too is that it's fun to be complimented and like you can move past it, but then you think about it for so long too.
Yeah.
But I always loved that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like communicating as our first step to
Yes, yes.
using these love languages. And then the second, you said something during your spiel. I just got so
Oh.
far off of it.
I said I'm not above asking for it.
Well,
Is it that?
yeah. So communicating, asking for it when you're not getting it. Oh,
Mhm.
and then leading by example. I really like that.
yes.
Yeah. So I feel like the communication is the first part. Leading
Mhm.
by example is kind of the action part that you can do.
Mhm.
And then the last part is asking when you feel like you're still not getting it, which
Mhm.
that's part of the communication. But I feel like communicating it from the beginning is a little bit different. Like,
Mhm.
hey, just so you know, this helps me feel really loved by you. Or even like if Mason's like, thanks so much for cooking dinner, saying like, that you're so welcome. It really means a lot to me that you thanked me for that. Or, like
Yes.
affirming
Uh-huh.
the actions that follow it. So yeah, I
Yes.
like that. And I think you could use that for any of the
Mhm.
categories for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely. I think the good thing about knowing that it's okay to speak up again and say like, hey, I need more, or like my joke about I'm not above asking again, is
Mhm.
that it is different than communication, because a lot of people can think that that one conversation is all you need, and then later you can get kind of annoyed of like, man, we've already talked about this, or like I've already expressed my emotions and my feelings, but he's not listening to me, or things like that. Like it is always an ongoing process. And so like in our now conversations, if there's a time where I'm feeling like, hey, these things that I did, they kind of went unnoticed, and like unfortunately for me, like that does hurt my feelings, I need them to be noticed, like I can say those things to Mason and he's like, oh, I thought I had been doing really well with words of affirmation. I felt like I had told you looked pretty every morning. I'm like, no, you did, and I loved that, but now I need you to tell me it too when I get home. Like, I'm like, now let's amp it up. Let's step it up a little bit more. I'm like, I love the baby steps, and let's keep it going. And then like I can tell him those things. And I also think that with words of affirmation, just because we're still on that one, that with words of affirmation, it sticks in your head for a long time. So if you were to give someone who is a words of affirmation person that compliment of like, I really like your hair like that, or oh my God, like this scent smells so good on you, or like, I don't know, like you're a great driver, or like things like that.
Yeah.
They stick with you for so long that then that person is going to always associate that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they might wear their hair the way that you said that you liked it. They might have that gold necklace that they told you that you really liked, like things like that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
Before we move on from words of affirmation,
mhm.
what would you say? Would you say like written it or like text or like that form
Oh,
is
yeah.
also just as impactful?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I really just think it's the recognition and the praise
Okay.
is really
I was
good.
going to say that maybe for someone who it feels really awkward to be like, hey, I'm really grateful for you and I love our life together. Like for
Mhm.
some people, that might not just roll off the tongue, it might feel
Yeah.
really awkward. Maybe a baby step, like you said, could be that they text you that, you know, like you
Yeah.
leave for work and they text you that because it's a little bit easier to send a
Yeah.
text or like leaving a note so that when you are intentionally thinking about, oh, my partner really cares about words of affirmation, you
Mhm.
could write them a note at that moment.
Mhm.
And even though later you probably do still want to give them words of affirmation, if
Mhm.
it's not as instinctive for you, you've kind of already done you've already done that. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. Like writing a
Yeah.
note like, oh, I love you so much or whatever. Or
Yeah.
you know, if they maybe you get up earlier than your spouse or
Mhm.
something and you could write them a little note or
Mhm.
just a little thank you for something that they did or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like that could maybe be like a little dip your
Yeah.
toe in the waters.
I
thing as
completely
well.
agree. I completely agree. And I think that those are things that's like expert level too. Like if you like for some day-to-day examples, kind of like what you were saying, if your husband leaves in the morning before you do, you can, once you wake up, you could send them a good morning text. Like it means so
Mhm.
much to that person who has a words of affirmation. Now, if your husband's not a words of affirmation person and neither are you, that's not going to go very far. And it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to do that.
Don't waste your energy.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you went grocery shopping and you put away the groceries and you know that when your spouse is going to open the fridge and go for their orange juice, a little sticky note on it that says like, hope you enjoy the juice. Like,
Yeah.
it's just those really, really little things that really make it nice.
Yeah.
Or your wife is painting her toenails and you say, hey, I really liked whenever you had pink that last time. Like, and then that
Mhm.
your wife's probably going to paint her toenails pink for the rest of her life. Like, it's just really little things like that.
yeah. All right. Do we want to move on to quality time we have next?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like this is Mason's.
Oh, it's definitely his.
Is
And
it?
it's like
Okay.
my lowest one.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So quality time, I feel like what people don't realize is that these people, they really, it really just matters being together.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's weird because quality time has the term or has the phrase, has the word quality in it. So you think you have to be sitting down having a deep discussion, or you think you have to
Yes.
be, you know, like whatever.
like doing something fun and
Yeah. And I don't really think it's that. I think it's
Mm-mm.
more just the presence of being together
Yes.
and having built-in time for that.
Yeah.
And kind of it doesn't have to be purely focused on one of another, but kind of like available, like emotionally
Yeah.
available to one another, if that makes sense.
Yes, 100%. I would say that your quality time people are going to be the people who are kind of keeping the relationship and friendship alive by asking, hey, do you want to hang out? Or, hey, would you want to go on a date night this week? Like, it's going to be those kind of people in your life.
Mhm.
And then it's also going to be those people who, when you're going to bed and your partner wants you to go to bed with them, they're probably quality time in that sense.
Mhm.
Like it's those small things where it doesn't need to be anything huge, but you're probably picking up on that. They just want to be with you.
yeah.
Kind of
Yeah,
situation.
I also think a signal that someone might be a quality time person are those people that bring up a lot of past times that you've shared together.
Yeah,
You know?
yes.
I know a lot of people do that in general, but I feel like my quality time friends and I would say Jared's top or second is quality time. And I feel like they talk a lot about past memories and things that you did that were so fun and whatever. And those things, like you were saying, the words with you stick, memories and fun times together stick for them as well.
Yeah.
I also think that something to be careful about with quality time people is sometimes they can be, if it's like a friendship, sometimes they can feel hurt if there has not been any time given to them in like a long time. So the longer that time passes, the more they feel like, oh, are things okay? Or like maybe that person
Yes.
doesn't like me as much as I like them or whatever. But like you
Mhm.
said, if their love language is quality time, most likely they're also going to be giving that way. So they're going to be setting up like, let's get lunch, let's get coffee, that sort of thing.
But then it's also going to be hurtful if they get canceled on a bunch, or it's going to be
Yeah.
hurtful if that person, like I'm a horrible texter, for example, it's going to be hurtful if I never text back and say,
Yeah.
give an answer. And so, so
Yes.
it is something to be conscious of.
Yeah. And I feel like people who are quality time, especially if they live far away or something like that, it means a lot whenever you do initiate that quality time.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be getting lunch or getting coffee or whatever. It can just be like a FaceTime, or even just sending a message and being like, I'm thinking of you, you know, I'm whatever, something like that. Or taking a picture and sending it to them and being like, oh my God, this made me think of you.
Yes.
They're going to think about like the times that you were together, that memory kind of came about or whatever. So I feel like those are ways to engage with people who are quality time that you might not see on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
But then with those people that like maybe you live with, your partner or your kids, like I said, or whatever, people that you live with or are really close or something, I do feel like having meals together, establishing maybe a routine where you are regularly connecting about something, not just like sitting next to each other on your phones on the couch.
Yes.
Which again, I do think that just being present together is enough. Like not being separated in the house in separate rooms.
Yeah.
For these quality time people, a lot of the time they just want to be like
in the
near
same room.
each other in the same room.
Yeah.
If you're like in the bedroom and they're in the living room and that's how you spend every night for the week, they're probably going to feel pretty lonely.
Yeah, absolutely. Mason and I used to a lot, because he plays like video games quite often.
Yeah.
And I don't video game at all. So a lot of times we put a couch in his office. So that way when he was playing his video games, I could lay on the couch and like watch Love Island or lay on the couch and read, because I'm not playing the video games, which if I was playing the video games with him, that's way top tier quality time for him. But I'm like, I'm really sorry. I love him so much. I am not going to play video games. So I'll be in the room with him. And and that way, if he's wanting to have the conversations and still talk and be together, I'm right there.
Yeah.
And although like I could easily do that in my bedroom while he's in his office, but and like that is fine with me. I don't feel any type of weirdness if that was me, but he does. So you have to work on making sure that you're meeting them where they need to be met.
I'm the same way. For us, it's Jared's desk space. So it's his workspace, but then in the evenings he games down there too. But it's downstairs. And for me, I could sit upstairs on the living room couch reading all night while he's gaming down there. I wouldn't really care. But he prefers to be in the same space. So typically I'll go down there, and I do think that it's just the emotional availability, accessibility of having that person there just is kind of a comfort to them and makes them feel loved, that you're there and you're willing to be in their space with them and whatnot. So I do think that could be like an added step or whatever from what we were talking about with like communicating and that sort of thing. Is maybe like, if quality time is one of your love languages, structuring your space to make it easy to spend quality time together.
Yes, like adding the couch.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a little couch down in Jared's space too, so that's now where I go down and I read my book, and usually Edward comes with me. So
and then it's a huge quality time.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it. Before we move on to our next category, I want to share some real life examples that you can do. So we've already kind of mentioned like just being with them in that same room. So if they're gaming a lot, you can be in that room with them and read your own book or watch your own TV show. I also think like cooking dinner together can be really good for you guys. Even watching the same TV show and you're just watching an episode per night, that can be really helpful for quality time. Going to the grocery store with them. Like I go to the grocery store with Mason all the time. Do I want to? No.
Oh.
But I do because he likes it.
Yeah, I actually like going to the grocery store together. But yeah, ever since we've been married, which has been 8 years, like we go to the grocery store every time together. Except on the rare occasion where like one of us has plans. Like today I had work today's a
Mhm.
Sunday that we're recording this, and that's the day we go to the grocery store. And
Yeah.
he went today for us because I had to work.
Mhm.
But on the rare occasion, we don't. But yeah, we pretty much always go to the grocery store together.
Same for us. Mason actually grocery shops while I'm at work, but I feel like we actually have to go back to the store every single night anyway. And so, or like if he is gonna go get us dinner. It's never just something where he's like, okay, I'm gonna go pick
Yeah.
up dinner. Whereas for me, that happens a lot where I'm like, I'm gonna go pick up dinner. Do you want to go with me? Whereas for him, it's like, we're gonna go pick up dinner, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're going. Like, but because that's
Funny.
important to him,
Yeah.
and that's how he likes to spend the time with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that those are some real life examples. They're so easy to do.
I also
And
think getting to
makes
know
us
the other people in these people's lives goes a long way. I
oh
I feel
yeah.
like quality time people really, really love when someone cares enough to pay attention to their friends, their coworkers, their family,
Yes.
their in-laws. Like when you are that involved in someone's life, I feel like they feel very loved by you.
Absolutely.
And it's not that you have to be involved, but just like knowing about those things or having met those people and being, again, like available
Mhm.
when they have, I don't know, a birthday or whatever, and you actually like engage with their in-laws or
Yeah.
their family members or something like that. Like I feel like it goes a long way with those people.
Absolutely it does.
So
Absolutely.
all right. So next we have physical touch. This is mine 100%.
Yes.
And this is another reason why I feel like giving and receiving is very similar, because I feel like I do I love receiving physical touch, and I feel like a lot of instinctually, like I like to hug people and like I touch their shoulders, and when I'm drunk I kiss their cheeks and like all sorts of stuff. So I feel like it's a very natural one, or I like to lean on people, that sort of thing. So this one's a very natural one for me, but I do think that when people think of physical touch, everybody's like, oh, this is like every man's because of sex. And that is like not,
it's not true.
And physical touch is way more than intimacy and the sexual or part of it. It's a lot of, I feel like, really small gestures go a really long way.
Yes.
And I can speak so Jared's actually pretty high on physical touch too, which is really nice for me.
Yeah.
because quality time and physical touch go really well together. So it works well together, where I'm like, yeah, I'll give you quality time as long as I can snuggle you.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, so I can say that as a physical touch person, that the small things go really, really far. When you were saying like you remember things for a long time when people say things, I still remember times when I was like really upset or something. And like I remember a time in high school when my best friend Olivia at the time, I was really upset about something. We were in the car, and I don't think there wasn't really anything for her to say, and I didn't really want her to say anything. But I just remember like a few minutes into the car ride, she just reached over and like grabbed my hand.
Aww.
Didn't say a word, just like grabbed my hand, and I just immediately was like felt so comforted and so seen.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've told him this, but when some days when we're like in the same space together or whatever, and it's been like an hour or two since Jared like came over and touched my shoulder or like kissed my head or something like that, if it's been like an hour or two since then, all of a sudden I am feeling like, oh my gosh, I think he's mad at me.
Yes.
Which is actually crazy. And I have to remind myself that's just not how he instinctively gives love every time.
Yep.
But sometimes I have to initiate like a hug or a kiss or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because I realize that if we haven't had some sort of like physical contact in a while, I just feel really lonely. Like he would feel if I spent all day in the other room.
Right.
You know, and didn't want to come into his space with him.
Right.
So I feel like for people who are physical touch, you don't have to constantly be like kissing them and hugging them. You can literally just like in the car, reach over and grab their hand or touch their leg, or something that Jared does almost every time he gets up off the couch is he like gets up off the couch and then he comes over and he just like touches my shoulders like behind my, like from behind the couch. And it's really, really nice. And I feel like he does that partially because physical touch is up there for him, but then also because he knows that I am extremely needy when it comes to that.
Yes, I love that one. Physical touch is my second, I think.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't used to think it was, but it's totally second for me, and I like really, really crave it. And it's like Mason's second last one.
Oh God.
So we are like completely opposite in all of our love languages, but I do think it gives us such a cool opportunity to like really work at the love languages, and I think that's why I am like so obsessed with them. But yeah, so like for him, he's like, I kissed you and I hugged you. What else do you need? And I'm like, I need more. Or like he's not a big cuddler in bed because he gets really hot. And honestly, like
Yeah.
I like to sleep away from whoever I'm sleeping next to, but I want my feet touching him. Or
Yeah.
I've told him before, I'm like, yeah, if you wake up in the middle of the night, like just put a hand on my back. Or like put your head next to my head on the pillow. I'm like, that's just nice.
Yeah.
And like, I know not, like, you don't have to do anything. We don't have to, you know, get crazy. But I'm like, I just like the soft, nice touches because it makes me know that you know I'm here. And like, I think that that's what it is behind it. Of like, I just like to be like seen.
I definitely think that whenever someone makes some kind of physical gesture toward you, you know, it just makes you feel like, oh, they're happy I'm here.
Yeah, I really like that one. Yeah, I think that we shared, or that you shared a lot of really good like day-to-day examples. But if you have a partner who is at physical touch and it's maybe not super natural to you, like the hand holding in the car is really sweet. A shoulder rub, so sweet. And like, it doesn't even have to be that long while you're sitting and watching TV together because you're a quality time person, or because your partner is a quality time person. Maybe you can offer a foot rub, like small things like that.
And again, I think the way, because obviously not everybody's going to take this quiz and read the book and whatever, or listen to this episode. But if you aren't sure that what your partner is and you think maybe their physical touch, another way to really know is how do they interact with their friends too, or like their family members? Because I feel like if they're really huggy or they're really like, especially guys, like I feel like guys do a lot of like the like what's
the
that called?
dap up.
Whatever, like that thing. Or I used to notice Jared a lot of the time, like if we were in the car and like Keegan was in front of him or something, he'd like reach up and touch his shoulders or something like that. And that's how I knew like that it was kind of high up for him too. But yeah, so pay attention to that. And if they are pretty naturally giving affection that way, it's very likely that they want to be receiving that from you as well.
Yes, I like that.
Alrighty, so I think the next one we have is gifts.
Yes.
Giving gifts is the fourth of the 5 love languages. And it's kind of in the name, but these are people that really appreciate the gesture of a gift. And it doesn't always have to be like a really expensive gift or anything like that. It's mostly just the thought behind the gift and this person being like, oh my gosh, you went out of your way to get me this.
Yes.
Or this item made you think of me. That's so nice.
Yes. I always want to put such a disclaimer because I feel like the people who are a gifts person get so much hate, and gifts are not materialistic. It does not have to be like what you said. It does not have to be those expensive bags and the trips to Italy. Like, it's not like that. It's the little gifts and like the things that just make you say, oh my God, you thought of me.
Yeah.
Like that's what the gifts are.
Yeah. I feel like your typical like hostesses can sometimes be this way because gifts is pretty high up on mine.
I was gonna say, where do you rank that for you?
It's probably second.
Okay.
I didn't really, I always had a thought, I gave gifts a bad rap.
Yeah.
Because I felt like growing up, I always thought of them as very materialistic and anybody who has gifts in their love language, they just want things and whatever.
Yes.
And I realized in college at some point that I'm a gifts person. And the way I realized was because like I'm always wanting to like buy, I was always wanting to like buy people's coffee, or I was always wanting to Like I really liked whenever we would host every Friday in our house, we would have people over for pancakes or whatever. I really liked making pancakes, and I really liked some people. I remember at one point, like, we had so many different types of pancakes, like blueberry, strawberry, M&M, chocolate chip, white chocolate chip or whatever, because people would tell me like, oh, my mom used to make blueberry pancakes and I really loved them. And then I was like, noted, next week I have blueberry pancakes.
Yep.
And it's like a blueberry pancake is not a big gift.
No.
It's not materialistic, but I was like, oh, this person will really appreciate this. And I was thinking of them when I did it.
Yeah.
When I got it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like for me, when someone gets me something that reminds them of me, like I was talking to my friend Mandy a little bit about this, but out of the blue one day I got a package. It was not my birthday or Christmas or anything. I got a package and she sent me this really cute, lovely glass water bottle.
Aww.
It's in the kitchen. I wish I had it right now. But it was really pretty. Had like a ton of pink floral type stuff and then little like motivational points through the day. You know how you see those on water bottles?
Oh, yes.
And it was a really pretty glass one. And she knew I had been working a lot on my water goal that year. And so it was really sweet. And she just thought of me and sent it to me. And it was like a huge deal to me. And it's not like I couldn't buy a water bottle myself.
Yeah.
Or it's not like I didn't already have a water bottle. But it's mostly just the thought behind it.
Yes, absolutely. So I think gifts is like my third one. So I feel pretty good about it. It's not as natural to me to like maybe think of it. But I do feel really good when I get them. But like one time, Chloe Love, our little sister, made me a paper plate and she colored on it and she painted on it. And on the back of it, she wrote "Love, Chloe Love." And she put a string on it because I think it was supposed to be a paper plate ornament for a Christmas tree. I hung it on my doorknob to my bedroom and I had it up there for like 5 years before it ripped eventually. But it was like my favorite thing that I had ever been given.
So sweet.
And it was a paper plate. But I loved it because Chloe Love made it for me. And she thought of me when she was coloring it. And I was like, oh, she made me a paper plate.
Yes.
And it was so special. And so I love things like that. Like, yeah, it doesn't have to be the shoes. It doesn't have to be the bag. It doesn't have to be that fancy hair product. It can be, one time you mailed me a yellow scrunchie. And every time I use that scrunchie, I think of you and I think about how you thought of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like another thing, like if you know that you have someone like this in your life or you're having trouble identifying them, another little signal might be like, who is the person that always is the first to buy Girl Scout cookies from you? Or is always the first to buy, like, do your Amazon teacher list or like that sort of thing.
Yes.
I feel like those people are often very naturally gift people. Or you get like you're having a bad day, you post about it on Instagram stories, and then you get like a $5 Venmo from this person saying like, go get yourself Starbucks or whatever. Something like probably more like $10 at this. But anyway, I feel like those are little things that like little gestures that you can do with those people too, is like sending them a $10, like, go get ice cream or a drink or Starbucks on me, you know, that sort of thing. I feel like those people like that, they just see it and it's mostly like, oh my gosh, they're thinking of me. And like we talked about with every other one up to this point, it's just a fact of feeling seen and known.
Yes.
And that feeling seen like that makes them feel less lonely and more loved.
Yeah, absolutely. I love gifts. I feel like because it gets such a bad rep, I'm like such a protector of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're a gifts person, I love you. I see you. I know you're not materialistic, but I love you.
Yes.
And I love you.
Yes, I totally get it. I was embarrassed when I realized that I felt like gifts was up there. Like my first reaction was to feel like ashamed. And then I was like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. It could literally just be like, I made your favorite meal because I remembered that you like this. Or like, or I brought your favorite candy when we watched a movie together or whatever, because I know that you love that. Or like with, I noticed like with Julia, we got pedicures one time and the place gives you like a complimentary drink. And I was like, she doesn't drink. So I brought my own like non-alcoholic bottle of champagne and we drank that together.
And that's so thoughtful.
And I feel, thank you.
You're welcome. That's like, I would never think of that. I love that.
I just feel like it's just like, yeah, think to me, those little things
Mm-hmm.
are not real. Like, I don't even think of them. They are gifts, but I
Mhm.
think of them more as just like, this is a thing that symbolizes that I thought of you.
Yeah, like little love yous. I
Yeah.
love it. My friend
Little
Lex
love
is
yous.
a big gift giver. And
Oh.
or like she not even a gift giver, but she's a big gifts person.
Uh-huh.
So every time I see her, she'll come up to visit and she immediately has a Sonic Dr. Pepper in her hand or like a Starbucks coffee for me.
I love that.
And yeah, and because she's like, oh, I love you and I stopped here before I came because I know you like this.
Well, I feel like we gave gift giving a better rap. So we can
Yes.
move on to acts of service, which
Last but not least,
last but not least, it is last on my list though.
it is totally last on my list too.
Man, what is that? That's interesting. I wonder what
I
that
know.
says about things.
Probably that we're daddy's girls and that we
He
never
did
had
every-
to do anything.
Yeah, so
Shut up, Dad.
so acts of service, if you can't get it from the title, acts of service is really appreciating when someone does something for you, especially without being asked.
Yes.
So these are things like doing the laundry, running out and doing errands, or
holding the door open.
holding the door open is a small one. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you know that you're this type of person if your gut instinct to with like the people around you is to like, oh, I'll make dinner, like if
Mhm.
someone's having a really bad day, like, and you want to show them love, you're like, oh, don't worry, I'll make dinner, or I'll do your chores, or I'll take care of that. I'll go to the DMV for you, or like whatever the crazy
Yeah.
thing is that person's stressed about. Which sometimes that person is an acts of service person, and that's a great response.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes they're like, I don't give an F about that.
Yeah.
Give me words or physical touch.
But give me a hug. Don't do it for me.
Yes, but for those acts of service people, I think nothing goes further than doing like a task that they really, really hate for them.
Absolutely.
And especially without being asked.
yes.
Do you have anybody like
Absolutely.
this in your life?
Oh, I definitely do. I actually just think that I just hung out with her. Her name is Melanie,
Mhm.
and she is a huge acts of service person. And I do think that acts of service, it may just be because of the people I'm surrounded with, because you're more likely to be like surrounded with people very similar to you. But I do feel like acts of service is the one that I see the least as number one on a lot of people's.
Interesting.
And so I do think it's like harder to get. But I was just talking to Melanie and she was talking about how it really annoys her when like her husband doesn't pick up his laundry. And it's not because the room is messy, but it's because she's like, why wouldn't he do that for me? Like instead he like now I have to pick it up, or like why would he just leave it there because he knows that bothers me kind of
Yes.
thing. And it was like
it's a sign of like dislove almost.
yes, that's how it felt to her. But
Yeah.
also dad is
Yes.
a huge acts of service, and I think that's why it's probably pretty low on ours.
Yeah, I do think that there are this is another one where men can think that they're acts of service,
Mhm.
and a lot might be, but some maybe not. It's interesting you said that you feel like this isn't a lot of people's, because within the Butte Girls, 5 of us, there 2 are.
Really?
Yeah, and I actually think almost 3 might be. So Niecy very much is.
Really?
Kristen has grown into realizing that she kind of is. And then Holly, we didn't get to talk to her about it, but we talked about this last time they were in town.
I love this.
And we were pretty sure that Holly was, because Holly that's how Holly gives love. Like we
Uh-huh.
definitely see that. But anyway, so we were talking about it, and that's how we talked about like receiving and giving and stuff, because Niecy was like, I definitely receive acts of service. And I was talking about how for me, so this is also when you're thinking about how to give your love, that you have to kind of consider what people do appreciate and don't appreciate.
Mhm.
If you give their top 1 or 2, you're never going to flunk out,
Yeah, right.
But giving only with their bottom one is not going to be good, because like acts of service is my bottom one. And part of that, it's a crazy connection in my head where
Mhm.
if Jared gets up and starts cleaning the house, I start to feel like, oh God, I need to clean the house. Or I feel guilty that I'm not cleaning the house. Or I feel like, okay, he cleaned the house today, I need to clean the house next week or something. Like it feels like I have to reciprocate.
Yes.
And it doesn't feel like love. It feels like almost
Like a chore.
Yeah, exactly. But with someone who is acts of service, when you do that, it feels like, oh, you love them so much. that you are taking something off their plate.
Yes.
Or you love them so much to respect their space, like you were saying, just cleaning up your clothes, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So if someone's acts of service, I definitely think, like Kristen, for instance, she never stops talking about, there was this one time, I didn't live with her at the time, but I stayed at her apartment for a day while she went to work.
Uh-huh.
Who knows what I was doing? Probably watching Gossip Girl. I don't know.
Oh, heck yeah.
And when she got back, I had folded her laundry. And she will never forget it. She talks about it all the time.
I love
She doesn't talk about it all the time,
that.
but she's brought it up several times since.
Yes.
And it was probably 10 years ago. And she was
Mhm.
like, we had only known each other maybe a month or something. And she was like, that was the nicest thing. And also because she hates doing laundry.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
yes. So Ryan does the laundry and she's like, I fall more and more in love with him every week.
Yes.
And it's like for those people, they're like, oh my gosh, what a relief.
Uh-huh.
And when they want to show love, a lot of the time they are running and getting Starbucks for you, or they are like, I do think
they're
gifts,
shoveling the driveway.
Shoveling
They're
the
heating up
driveway.
your car.
yes, or
Mhm.
they might be the people that like file the taxes in the family or something like that. Like they
Yes.
might do certain things that
Mhm.
help you out
Yeah.
without you seeing it, and they want that back.
Yes, absolutely. It's such a bummer that this is not high on my list because this is such a great love language.
Yeah.
And I love this love language, and I love people who are acts of service because it inspires me and reminds me to like, oh, I should be like
doing more things for
yes,
people.
like doing
Yeah.
things for people. Because I think that the thing about love languages too is that you can have a top two, but you need to embody all of them at some point, and like you need to figure out how to love everyone of all types of different love languages.
For sure.
So I do love meeting acts of service people because I'm like, oh my gosh, I forget to do acts of service for others because I'm always so like tied up in my own thoughts in my own head, and I'm busy over here telling them, wow, I love your coat, and they're like, thanks, I'm gonna go use it outside. And I'm like, oh, great for you, good job. Like, and I think it's a great reminder whenever I do meet acts of service people, and I love that you have so many because I have like none.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like Niecy sounds similar to like what you were saying with Melanie. Niecy has that because Kevin's physical touch and Niecy's not. So we've talked a lot about this, how like Kevin will come by and he's like hugging her or whatever, and she's making dinner, and in her head she's like, I don't need a hug, I need help with dinner.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
She's like, can you please watch the lettuce?
Yeah. Whereas me, like Jared come by and like give me a hug, I'd be like, oh, I love this. If he started helping with dinner, I'd be like, oh my God, was I doing it wrong? Or like, was he like, did he think that I wasn't going to get it done in time? Or like, did he feel like he could just do it better? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just a very different mindset
Absolutely.
of how you feel loved and seen.
Oh, I just love the love languages. It's like a science. It's so fun. I need to read that book because I was literally just about to say, I wish there was a book I could read. But there you go. There's a whole book right there.
Yes, it's really good. Yeah, and it's pretty short. The 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman. And if you do have kids or plan to have kids, I do think that reading the one that is Love Languages for Kids would be helpful too, because I think it just goes into a little bit about how their brains are developing and how to give it to them. We don't have to get into this, but when we were talking about it when the girls were in town, we did someone put out a theory, or Mandy shared that there's a theory that whatever love language you felt you didn't get as a child is the one that is the top for you.
Oh.
Which I was like, I don't know. You'd have to explore that. But just kind of a thought. I don't know. It could be.
Yeah.
And then someone else was like, no, I feel like it would have to be the one that you got the most because you know how to model it. And so I don't know. I think
I feel like it could go both ways.
It definitely could.
Yeah, depending on the home life you had, the parents you had, the kind of kid you were. Oh, wow, what a theory.
Yeah. So
Someone
I feel like
look into that.
Yeah. So I feel like the book and the quiz and whatever, that would probably help you the most with what yours are. And then you could honestly go in and artificially, if there was someone you're like, I really want to know theirs, you could go in and maybe see if you could artificially answer for them and like see if you could kind of guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I like that. Well, if you were listening to this episode and you heard your love language and you had some ideas of how you love to be loved or ways that you think you really embody loving other people with that love language, we'd love to hear it. So comment it, leave it in the review, DM us, whatever it is. We'll definitely put up something too on our Instagram story asking for ways that you love to be loved, asking for ways that you love others. And so we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, and we'll share some of this content a little bit more condensed on our Instagram as well.
Definitely. With those real life suggestions of how to love others.
And we'll put the love languages book in the show notes. So
Yes.
awesome. Well, thank you guys. Please share this with friends and loved ones who you think would benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
And cheers!
Cheers!